All right. Yeah. Often in life, we are asked to define ourselves. When we first meet someone, we might tell them a little bit about who we are and where we come from. This phenomenon has become all the more common with the advent of Zoom. In the bottom left corner of our pictures, you will often see a name and sometimes even our chosen pronouns. Then, usually, when first meeting someone in a meeting or something else, you'll, sorry, in the middle of meeting someone, you'll have to do an icebreaker and something that allows you to give a shallow representation of who you are as a human being. But truly understanding human nature is a daunting proposition at best. It takes years of deep introspection and an awful lot of people watching before you can even broach the idea of knowing your own true nature. In Disney's Kung Fu Panda, Shifu, a character in the role of a wise leader, insinuates that in order for him to achieve true inner peace, he would have to spend 40 years alone in a cave asking a single question: who am I? In my adolescent years, I was often paralyzed by this question. High school was not a nice time in my life. I was often picked on and bullied by my classmates. I was jeered at and called all sorts of abominable names. They made me feel low, small, and inconsequential. Something that many of us have come to learn from recent history is that if something is said often enough, even something that's false, with a loud enough voice, people can come to believe it. And so, as my classmates launched recurrent malicious taunts and incessant sneers, I started to believe the things that they were saying to me. All of a sudden, the question, who am I, became a lot more difficult to answer. These feelings followed me well into my college career. In the summer of 2016, in my third year of undergrad, I went on a spiritual journey to Israel where I met a rabbi named Moshe Friedman. Moshe noticed that I was often lost in my thoughts and asked me what were some of the things that I was thinking about. I told him that I was struggling. I was struggling to find the truth about who I am. And in the years since high school, I had never really shed the luggage I was carrying. He looked at me with these deep, piercing blue eyes over his full moon spectacles and said, "You're a lot like Jacob." "What do you mean?" I replied. And he told me this story. The three patriarchs of blessed memory are archetypes of three distinct characteristics all Jews should aspire to acquire and embody. Abraham was chesed. His compassion and love for absolute strangers knew no borders. Isaac was gevura. His awe of God and his focus on self-control was paramount. And finally, there was Jacob, who was Tefereth, which I will translate as glory. "What?" I said in disbelief. "How in the world am I like Jacob?" And in a very rabbi way, he gave me a not so helpful answer. Because he too struggled. I can tell you today that Rabbi Friedman was absolutely right. In this week's Parsha, Vieshlach, the Torah says, "Vayivater Yaakov levado v'ya'avek ish amo ad alot ha'shachar." And Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the rising of the sun. Our tradition understands this man, maybe, to be an angel, but not just any angel, the guardian angel of Esau. Now, Jacob has had a full life since he saw Esau. He has wives, kids, a growing tribe to call his own. You would think that he would have long since moved on from the incident of stealing his brother's birthright. But as you can imagine, one day, Jacob is sitting alone under the stars, and his old life comes back to haunt him. We understand the, quote, wrestling to have been a physical confrontation, but I think it's worth understanding it in a more metaphorical way as well. Perhaps when Jacob was alone in the night, he was simply reminiscing about the choices he made in life. I think we can all empathize with the idea of sitting awake at night, staring at the ceiling, as our brain recounts for us the embarrassing or remorseful things we've done in the past. And so wrestling with a painful memory can be extremely difficult. Memories bring with them strong emotions, which can be hard to deal with. The story of Jacob wrestling with Esau's angel can be understood in the context of Jacob recalling the events of coercing the birthright and stealing the blessing from his brother. The tremendous remorse and guilt he feels from such memories is so much that it causes him physical pain and leaves a lasting wound in his hip. This incredible trial of self-reflection is only brought to an end when dawn begins to approach. Imagine staying up all night wrestling with the awful choices you've made, but finally the alarm rings and you have to start your day and you no longer have to deal with the mental trauma. In that same vein, the memory attempts to retreat to Jacob's subconscious to then return in the future to plague him again, as horrible memories often do. But as the day approaches and Jacob must rise to begin his daily chores, thus pulling his attention from the introspection, as the memory is about to leave from the forefront of his mind, he stops it from retreating and forces this guilt-ridden memory to bless him. But what does that mean? Jacob forces this bad memory to bless him? In my opinion, it means that he has done something that most of us are never able to do. He found peace in what happened in the past, and furthermore, finally realized what happened in the past does not define who he is now. Rashi expresses something similar to this effect in his commentary. Lo yomar od shehavarachot bo lecha be'akava ve'varamia ki im v'shara uve'gelui panim. It shall no longer be said that the blessings came to you through trickery and deceit, but with nobility and openness. Meaning that via his victory over his past guilt, Jacob has changed the way not only the world perceives his past actions, but perhaps how he himself sees them. To that effect, God looks down upon Jacob after the conclusion of this mental and spiritual battle and feels the need to rename Jacob and does so. Jacob is dubbed Israel, one of the meanings of which is to prevail over. As Hoffman says, Atzem shinui Hashem na'aseh al yedei Hashem atzmo. The change of name was done by God himself. We can understand this to mean that God recognizes the tremendous growth Jacob has just achieved. However, that is not the end of the story. Bechor Shur comments, Vayesh paresh, malach haya shehi rotzeh lehafilo ele shehakadosh baruch hu ezro. And it must be interpreted that there was an angel who wanted to overthrow him, but God helped. God helped Jacob overcome the ghost of his past, perhaps because God knew that Jacob was beating himself up for no reason, and perhaps there was no reason for him to struggle with his baseless guilt. I think this is what Rabbi Friedman was alluding to when we last spoke in Israel. One who struggles with their past decisions and engages in self-reflection are engaging in a higher level of spirituality, one that is akin to wrestling angels. He wanted me to know that there was a reason and precedence for my internal struggles. In our ability to overcome and work through trauma in our past, we find Tifereth waiting for us on the other side. Those who struggle will inevitably find peace, just as Jacob did when he overcame the angel. Thank you.